Part 1, Introduction and Core Thesis. Every human action, from the smallest to the greatest, stems from insecurity and the desire to escape it. Those words from the book struck my mind like a hammer. We often think we live for some lofty goal, happiness, freedom, success. But if we look closely, the driving force is far simpler. We act to reduce insecurity, an empty stomach, a home without shelter, an uncertain future. All of these push us to work, accumulate, trade, and build. The book I want to share with you is not a get-rich-quick formula, nor a manual for running an economy. It is a map explaining how humanity moved from small hunter-gatherer bands to erecting towering cities, global markets, and currencies that have lasted centuries. This is the story of economics, but seen through a very different lens, not starting with charts or equations, but from human beings themselves, with all their fragility, selfishness, intelligence, and contradictions. Reading this book felt like entering an old room where familiar prejudices were overturned. We used to believe value resides in objects, but here it appears as something intangible, existing in each person's subjective perception. We once thought consumption drives wealth, but the book shows that saving, deliberately refusing immediate consumption, is the seed of prosperity. We are accustomed to hearing that interest is a banking tool, but here it is revealed as the price of time, the heartbeat of the entire economy. Perhaps what haunts me most is when the author leads us from stories about labor and money to a stark conclusion: civilization exists only as long as violence is restrained. All the progress we pride ourselves on, technology, energy, trade, markets, can collapse in an instant if people revert to treating violence as the rule of the game. Civilization, it turns out, is not the default state, it is a fragile achievement that must be protected every single day. I share this book with you not only because it explains economics, but because it makes me see everyday life with different eyes. Every coin I hold, every decision I make, becomes a declaration of how I face time and the future. When I save or spend, I am telling myself whether I believe in tomorrow. When I trade with someone, I am choosing peace over violence. When I accept discipline, I am helping preserve a fragile civilization. So the question I want to ask you is this: if every small action of ours is connected to the fate of civilization, how will you choose to live? Will you let yourself be carried by the winds of the present, spend everything, enjoy everything, and let tomorrow take care of itself? Or will you dare to go against instinct, delay gratification, save, build, and trust that what you sow today will bear fruit for future generations? This is not merely an economic question, it is a question about human character. Before diving into the review, we encourage listeners to buy and read the book to fully experience its content. Only by reading the entire book will you truly understand the ideas I am sharing. Please buy the book and support the author. Now, let us begin the review together. Part 2, Human Action and Purposeful Behavior. Humans do not live by raw instinct alone. We do not merely eat when hungry, sleep when tired, strike when angry. Between those primal urges lies a pause in which we stop, choose, reflect. That pause is what defines our uniquely human quality. In every action I see a calculation, clumsy or sophisticated. We always aim toward a better state, a satisfaction we believe will free us from the insecurity of the present moment. This sounds simple, but it is the pillar for understanding all of economics. Not lifeless numbers, not colorful charts, but the purposeful actions of individuals are the true source. Every market is merely a mosaic assembled from millions of such tiny choices. Action here does not mean impulsiveness. A parent who denies their own hunger to save food for their child is acting rationally. A person who walks instead of taking a taxi to save a few coins is acting rationally. Even a decision that later proves wasteful was, at the moment, the product of reasoning. Reason does not guarantee perfect outcomes, but it gives every action meaning. Imagine the world as soft clay, shapeless, meaningless. Only human hands and minds mold it into tools, homes, meals. If we look only at the clay, we see nothing useful. But when we observe how humans use it, we see an entire civilization. This also explains why economics cannot be fully captured in mathematical formulas. No matter how elegant the equations, they cannot touch the uncertain flow of human desires. There is no constant for longing, no fixed variable for fear. When an economist tries to measure, they grasp only the shell, the soul, the actions and choices, slips through their fingers. Part 3. Subjective value and marginal utility. Let us look at a familiar example, minimum wage laws. On paper, they appear as a gift from the state to workers, who wouldn't want higher pay. Mathematical models are built to prove that total income rises, consumption increases, new jobs appear, and social productivity soars. But that is only the picture of numbers, not of people. Consider a small shop owner's calculation. If hiring an employee at the higher wage costs more than the value that employee produces, the owner faces a loss. The choices become, don't hire or hire illegally. In both cases, the most vulnerable workers, those with the lowest skills, are the ones who lose opportunities. The real law here is not government decree but simple reality. No one voluntarily pays more than the value they receive in return. A policy promoted as humane ends up excluding the weakest. That is the power of approaching economics through human action. It strips away the cloak of statistics and exposes the survival motives of each individual. Value does not lie in objects, it lies in minds. Consider water and diamonds. One sustains life, without it we die. The other merely sparkles and feeds no one. Yet in the market water is cheap and diamonds are exorbitantly expensive. This paradox baffled economists until Carl Menger explained that value is subjective, not inherent in the thing itself. Water is cheap not because it is useless, but because it is abundant. Diamonds are expensive not because they are essential, but because they are scarce and desired. An object becomes a commodity only when someone recognizes it can satisfy a need. A plain stone is meaningless until someone sees it can be sharpened into a tool. Crude oil once plagued landowners who paid to clean it up, later it became black gold when engines ran on it. Value cannot be measured with rulers or scales. It exists in each person's subjective judgment, at each moment. Today I may consider the book in my hand priceless, tomorrow, after finishing it, its value to me drops. This invisible shifting is the heartbeat of the market. Part 4. Time preference, saving, capital, and civilization. Time is the ultimate scarce resource. Everything else can increase, money, machines, food, even solar energy, but time flows away relentlessly and never returns. Every choice we make is really a choice about how to use those finite moments. This leads to opportunity cost, the invisible but ruthless price of every decision. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Even if you pay no money, you pay with your life's time. We always value the present more than the future. If we can enjoy a good meal now, many find it hard to postpone for tomorrow. This is time preference. People with low time preference are willing to sacrifice some present enjoyment to invest in the future. They save, build, plant, trusting tomorrow will repay them. Those with high time preference want instant gratification and care little about long-term consequences. At the individual level this is just lifestyle choice, at the societal level it separates thriving civilizations from stagnant ones. Every great achievement, pyramids, cathedrals, libraries, bridges, power grids, is the result of generations willing to sacrifice the present for a future they would never see. Saving is not merely about money, it is about time. To have capital one must postpone consumption. To have technology one must invest in research. To have peace one must patiently build rules and trust. Every act of saving is an affirmation, I believe tomorrow exists and is worth waiting for. If action shows how humans differ from animals, subjective value explains exchange, and time is the stage on which it all plays out, then these three pieces, action, value, time, are locked together like the sides of a triangle. Remove one side and the entire structure collapses. Only when seen whole do we realize that economics is not a collection of dry formulas but a vivid human story. We choose, we assign value, we race against time. Part 5. Labor, ownership, and the foundation of order. In every day of our lives, we stand before an invisible scale. One side holds idleness, the other labor. Idleness brings immediate pleasure, the moment when a person simply enjoys existing. Labor is different, it is not appealing in itself but only for what comes afterward, food, shelter, clothing, a better future for one's children. The tension between these two poles turns life into a chain of choices. Here is a hard truth: if it were possible to live without doing anything, no one would choose to work. But the world grants us no such privilege. Scarcity forces humans to submit to labor in order to banish insecurity. And paradoxically, it is from this burden that all great achievements are born. I have seen the eyes of the unemployed, and not only the fear of where the next meal will come from, but also the deeper emptiness of no longer feeling needed by the world. Labor is not merely a means of survival, it is the bridge that connects a person to the sense of being useful. When productivity rises, 1 hour of work yields more. One might think humanity could finally shed labor altogether. Yet the richer we become, the more our needs expand, and labor simply changes form, it never disappears. Debates about machines replacing humans always overlook this reality. Every time one door closes, new needs and dreams open another, calling us back into the cycle of labor in a different guise. Scarcity forces another rule: property rights. I first realized this watching children fight over a single toy. When there is only one small car and 2 children want it, conflict erupts. Only when a convention establishes ownership does order return. At larger scales the same principle holds: society cannot function if people do not know what belongs to whom. From this arises a fundamental rule: first, every person must own their own body. If I do not own myself, who has the right to command whether I live or die, work or rest? From self-ownership flow all other forms: land, tools, the fruits of labor. This right is not a gift bestowed by anyone, it is the inevitable outcome of scarcity and the human need to survive. Protecting property creates the environment in which labor becomes meaningful. No one will sweat and toil if the results can be arbitrarily taken away. But when people know the fruits belong to them, they willingly work, save, and trade. Social order is built not on lofty slogans but on these simple principles: respect what belongs to others, protect what belongs to you. Looking around, we see every great civilization began with clear definitions of ownership. It is no accident that societies that treat this lightly tend to decline. When no one has secure claim to the results of their effort, the incentive to produce vanishes. Collapse does not start with resource depletion, it begins when faith erodes that one's hard work will be recognized and rewarded. Labor and ownership are therefore two sides of the same coin. Without labor, ownership is an empty shell. Without ownership, labor becomes meaningless punishment. Together they form the bedrock of economic life, where people can sustain themselves and dare to dream beyond mere survival. Part 6: Capital, Technology, Energy, and the Extension of Production. Once humans learn to labor and protect what they produce, the next question arises: how to extend vision beyond immediate needs. Here capital enters the picture. Picture a hunter. If every day he simply takes his spear into the forest, he survives but never advances. One day he decides to eat less, go hungry for a short while, and instead spend time crafting a trap. That trap is capital, a produced intermediate good that does not directly satisfy hunger but opens the way to far greater future productivity. That is the essence of capital, lengthening the structure of production. We accept delayed consumption to create tools, machines, systems. These then multiply the power of labor. But every lengthening step requires waiting and patience. Those with excessively high time preference find it hard to invest in the future because they always choose to consume now rather than accumulate. Capital is what separates societies that live hand-to-mouth from those capable of building civilization. A field worked only with hoes and shovels feeds few people. Introduce plows, reapers, irrigation systems, and productivity explodes. Each layer is accumulated capital. Prosperity does not fall from the sky. It is the result of countless small decisions to save, repeated across generations. Yet capital is not a magic without cost. Every machine, factory, or great project demands the sacrifice of immediate consumption. A society unwilling to save cannot generate the large pools of capital needed for major investment. This is the paradox many refuse to face: the communities that dare refuse instant gratification are the ones that unlock wealth tomorrow. Many believe saving is negative, that it suppresses consumption and slows the economy. The opposite is true. Consumption does not create new wealth, it only uses up what already exists. Only saving releases resources for long-term production. Eat a loaf of bread now and it is gone. Save part of the flour and you can build a larger bakery later. Consumption sustains the present, saving nourishes the future. Capital also has limits. You cannot lengthen production structures indefinitely. Beyond a certain point, additional layers bring diminishing returns. Each investment must weigh what is gained against what is sacrificed, time spent against output returned. Thus the degree of capital accumulation in a society always mirrors its prevailing time preference. Where people trust the future, they save more and fund long-term projects. Where faith in tomorrow fades, they consume everything today, and stagnation follows. Capital is not merely machines and buildings, it is proof of reason's victory over the temptation of the present. Every brick, every power line, every engine is evidence that someone said no to immediate pleasure in order to create something enduring. Part 7, Commerce, Money, and the Spontaneous Order of Markets. I realized something simple that many overlook: when two people trade, each believes they're getting the better end of the deal. Otherwise neither would agree voluntarily. This paradox explains why commerce is not a zero-sum game. One person gives up something they value less in exchange for something they value more. The other does the same. Both come away better off. This seems obvious, yet throughout history it has been the key that lifted humanity out of self-sufficiency. Trade begins with specialization. Even if one person is worse at everything, they still have a comparative advantage in the activity where their disadvantage is smallest. By specializing, society as a whole grows richer. Commerce turns even the weakest into someone valuable. The wider the market, the greater the gains from specialization. In a small village, no one can afford to specialize in making shoes alone. In a city, entire districts can form around shoemaking. In a global economy, industries fragment into tiny specialized tasks, even down to single screws. Every expansion of trade, from village to province, nation to world, multiplies opportunities for deeper specialization and higher productivity. Commerce does more than deliver goods, it binds strangers together. Needing rice from a farmer gives reason to maintain peaceful relations. Needing raw materials from distant places gives reason to build roads and bridges. Trade creates invisible ties that turn competition into cooperation. It is a beautiful paradox: individual self-interest, channeled through trade, becomes the glue holding society together. Trade does not eliminate conflict, but it raises the cost of conflict so high that violence becomes less attractive. The world becomes safer not through moral preaching but through the very real benefits of exchange. Yet for trade to reach its full potential, a common tool is needed. Direct barter has limits. I have salt and want fish, but the fisherman wants wood, not salt. This double coincidence of want strangles commerce. Here arises one of humanity's greatest inventions, money. Money did not emerge by decree from above. It arose naturally from thousands of exchanges. People noticed that certain goods were more readily accepted than others: salt, cattle, shells, precious metals. These had superior salability, everyone believed others would accept them in turn. Once something achieves markedly higher salability, it begins serving as a medium of exchange and gradually becomes money. Durability matters most over time. Grain rots in months, gold retains its form for centuries. That is why precious metals became the foundation of money across civilizations. As societies grew and trade linked regions, selection converged. Many goods once served as money in different places, but wider commerce favored the single most trusted one. This was not imposition, it was natural selection, much like a common language emerges in a multilingual community. Money liberates humanity from barter's constraints. It allows markets to expand beyond village borders. With money, a craftsman can sell to anyone without needing to find the exact person who wants what he offers in return. Money also lets us store value across time, turning present effort into future capital. Yet money attracts power. History is filled with rulers seeking to control it, taxing in money, issuing it, debasing it, printing more. Whoever controls money controls trade and, ultimately, people's lives. This is a dangerous relationship. Money was selected by the market, but when monopolized and manipulated, it loses its function. In times of hyperinflation, trust collapses, trade reverts to barter or flees to stronger currencies. Trust is money's core value. Once trust breaks, no force can compel it to hold value. Money itself does not create wealth. Doubling the units of money while goods and services remain unchanged does not make society richer, prices simply double. Money is a measuring rod, not the thing that produces value. The right question is not how much money is enough, but what kind of money is sound. Money the market accepts and that cannot be arbitrarily eroded. Part 8. Interest, credit, banking, and the distortions of time. When a person holds money, the choice is not only what to buy but when, now or later. That is where time enters the game again. We all carry an inclination toward the present. Many find it hard to postpone a good meal today. Yet people differ in degree. Those with high time preference rush to spend. Those with low time preference can bundle up, hold back, and wait. This difference shapes individual destinies and collective fates. Money is not just a medium of exchange, it is a mirror reflecting time preference. Sound money that holds value over decades encourages saving, people trust their purchasing power will not erode. Weak money that loses value quickly forces everyone to spend immediately, accelerating the cycle of short-termism. Stable money lowers time preference across society. Inflating or debased money raises it. Societies with hard money dared to build cathedrals, roads, and canals that took generations to complete. They trusted that value stored today would remain tomorrow, that their seeds would not be stolen by inflation or deceit. In places where money steadily loses value, no one thinks long-term. Life becomes frantic, consumption immediate, the future abandoned like barren land. Time preference is no abstraction, it is the red thread running through every decision. I have seen it in a farmer saving seed for the next season, a family scrimping to build a roof, a merchant risking capital on a sea voyage. Up close these are acts of personal patience, from afar they create capital, lengthen production structures, and lift entire societies above bare subsistence. Paradoxically, instant gratification makes people feel free, yet only the ability to delay opens the path to real freedom. Only with reserves can one escape the daily anxiety spiral. Only with large accumulated capital can a society reduce dependence on nature and disaster. In the modern era, one particular form of money stands out, a currency with an absolute hard cap, impossible to inflate arbitrarily, unbound by any central authority. It forces people to confront real time, no cheating through unlimited credit. Many see in it a return to old discipline, saving, patience, accumulation. From time preference we move to the next layer, credit and banking, where time itself is bought, sold, priced, and contested. If time preference determines the level of saving, credit is the bridge connecting those willing to postpone and those who want to consume or invest ahead of their means. On one side are savers who forego using all their wealth today. On the other are borrowers who need capital now to expand production or invest. Banks emerge as intermediaries, collecting savings and channeling them to those who need funds. Genuine credit rests on real saving. Someone has already sacrificed present enjoyment so that portion of wealth is available for others. When the borrower repays, they return the principal plus interest, compensation for the delay and the risk borne by the saver. Interest is not an imposition, it is the price of time. It reflects society's aggregate time preference. Abundant saving pushes natural interest rates down. Scarce saving pushes them up. Many view interest as unjust and dream of abolishing it. But imagine interest at zero, anyone could borrow any amount without compensating the weight of others. The signal of capital scarcity vanishes. Every project, feasible or fantastic, gets funded. The result is chaos, not prosperity. Interest, however uncomfortable, acts as a natural filter distinguishing viable dreams from delusions. Banks, when functioning properly, pump lifeblood through the economy. Successful loans nourish factories, farms, businesses. Yet danger lurks. If banks extend credit not backed by real savings but by creating circulation credit out of thin air, they manufacture an illusion of capital. In the short run, everything appears prosperous, factories rise, projects launch, jobs multiply. But they have built on sand. Interest rates are artificially suppressed, encouraging overly long-term investments that would have been rejected under honest signals of time. People are lured into believing more capital exists than reality allows. When truth emerges, half-finished projects are abandoned, loans default, banks fail, confidence shatters. All of this stems from distorting the price of time. Part 9: Business Cycles and the Fragility of Manipulated Money. When credit expands beyond genuine savings, business cycles, with their booms and busts, become inevitable. I have witnessed streets ablaze with lights, construction everywhere, universal belief that prosperity had arrived. A few years later, abandoned buildings, unemployed workers, insolvent banks. What seemed flourishing was illusion. The root lies in credit creation unbacked by real savings. When banks issue circulation credit, they expand the money supply, account balances swell. Entrepreneurs mistake this for genuine capital abundance. Artificially low interest rates lure them into long-term projects that would never pass muster under undistorted time signals. For a moment the economy swims in euphoria. But real capital, for machines, materials, labor, does not multiply just because ledger numbers grow. The contradiction surfaces: consumption cannot absorb everything, resources are misallocated, risky ventures collapse, debts go unpaid, banks tighten, trust evaporates. The cycle closes in recession. Many blame greed or entrepreneurial recklessness. But the deeper cause is false signals from manipulated money. When the price of time, interest, is artificially lowered, even cautious people get swept into the frenzy. They cannot distinguish real opportunity from mirage because every indicator is bent. This is the inevitable consequence of fiduciary media and credit expansion. Boom plants the seeds of the next bust. After each crisis, the political solution is often more of the same: further credit expansion. They try to cure the disease with the very poison that caused it. The deeper paradox: the more society attempts to centrally steer the capital market, the greater the distortions. Planning capital allocation is not like running a single firm, it requires reading millions of subjective valuations that shift daily. No central mind or committee can replace the spontaneous signals of prices and interest rates. Thus in the past century we have seen repeated attempts by power centers to dictate interest rates, money supply, credit flows, with the result that cycles grow more violent and global in reach. A small policy error can shake the world. Part 10: Violence, Defense, and the Thin Line of Civilization. Looking back, the thread is unbroken: humans act to reduce insecurity, assign subjective value, treat time as supreme scarcity, labor and own to create meaning, accumulate capital, invent technology, harness energy, trade to specialize, invent money to expand exchange, let markets self-organize. Yet when credit is distorted, cycles emerge. That is the flow of economics, glorious yet fragile. Money is not merely a tool, it is a magnifying mirror of human character. Discipline, low time preference, saving, credit backed by real capital lead to sustainable ascent. But greed for instant riches, desire for quick wealth through artificial balances, builds towers only to kick them down. Civilization is built on kept promises and can collapse on broken ones. Humans not only labor and trade, we also plunder. Scarcity breeds conflict. If what I need is in your hands, I have two paths: trade with you or take by force. Both relieve my want, but force leaves scars while trade opens futures. Exchange creates, violence merely redistributes. Violence is destruction. Trade adds value for all, plunder transfers existing value from one to another, often with blood. The economic effect is obvious: when any fruit of effort can be seized, who will save or invest? Who will build great works if tomorrow they may burn? In such environments time loses value, time preference soars to the extreme. Survival today trumps any dream of tomorrow. Society slides back toward a primitive state of hunting, gathering, and immediate defense. Violence is not just immoral, it is civilization's enemy. It destroys the conditions for markets, trust, secure property, peaceful exchange. A resource-poor community that respects one another and trades freely can still prosper. A rich one dominated by violence quickly decays. Every human advance has been tied to restraining violence, from tribes establishing rules, to agreements that this is mine and that is yours, to treating seizure as crime rather than glory. Violence never vanishes, it waits for opportunity. What matters is how society confronts it, whether might makes right or mechanisms protect the weak. Yet even successful defense carries paradox, the protectors can become new oppressors. People build barriers against violence, but those barriers can turn into swords. Recognizing violence can annihilate achievement, humans had to think of defense. Protection is not luxury, it is the minimum condition for economic activity. Build a granary you cannot defend, and you labor for thieves. At first defense is personal, families erect fences, set traps, arm themselves. Soon they discover a hard truth, individuals are too weak against organized groups. So they band together, share watch, raise alarms. Cooperation boosts survival but introduces a new problem. Everyone wants protection, yet no one wants to bear the full cost. A city wall requires village contribution, yet some will free ride, letting others sweat while they benefit. This is the free rider paradox in security. If too many shirk, the wall falls and all lose. Thus arises the need for specialized protection, some focus solely on defense while others pay for it. Professional forces form, then organizations with power to sustain them. These entities, whatever their name, originate from the shared need to guard against violence. But another paradox immediately appears: the force created to protect can become the new source of violence. When concentrated power to use force rests with a small group, the risk is real that they will turn weapons inward on those who delegated it. History overflows with examples of protective institutions turning into tools of oppression, overtaxation, seizure in the name of security. The question remains, can a community be strong enough to defend itself yet avoid the trap of overempowering its guardians? Every society grapples with this balance, enough power to repel invaders, but not so much as to become tyranny. From an economic view, defense is a necessary cost. It produces no new wealth, but without it existing wealth vanishes. It resembles insurance, unpleasant to pay, but catastrophic to lack. When violence reigns, chaos follows. When defense is ordered, order emerges. But the door is narrow. If defense mechanisms are unbound, they become new violence. If too weak, they fail to protect. Civilization therefore requires not just rules but a system to guard those rules without subverting them. Part 11: The Nature and Fragility of Civilization. When violence is restrained and defense is ordered, a door opens to something higher: civilization. Civilization is not skyscrapers or dazzling inventions. It is a state of society in which people trust that the wealth they create will be protected, that voluntary exchange is the common rule of the game, and that violence remains the exception rather than the norm. Everything I have described, labor, property, capital, technology, energy, trade, money, markets, need solid ground on which to grow. That ground is safety from violence. When property rights are respected, saving has meaning, capital accumulates, technology is invested in, energy is harnessed, trade expands, markets function, and money holds its value. These links are tightly interwoven. But every link can snap if violence once again becomes master. Civilization is therefore the outcome of low time preference choices repeated across generations. People agree to build great works not only for themselves but for their children and grandchildren to inherit. They accept financial discipline and refuse to debase money so that a lasting foundation can be laid. They create institutions to preserve the rules of the game while deliberately limiting the power of those institutions. Civilization does not descend from heaven. It is nourished by patience, self-restraint, and trust. Yet its price is fragility. Nothing guarantees that these achievements will last forever. It takes only one generation to lose faith, raise its time preference, spend recklessly, borrow wildly, debase money, or loosen property rights, and centuries of construction can vanish in a flash. History has shown it many times. Civilizations do not die from lack of resources but from the loss of discipline, from letting violence slip back in as the rule. I remember haunting images of once glorious cities reduced to rubble, not merely worn by time, but proof that civilization can always decay when its principles are taken lightly. Internal erosion, neglect of property, soft money, unchecked power, often does the damage long before any external enemy strikes. Civilization is like a clear river, the water stays pure only because upstream rules keep it clean. Loosen one bend and the whole flow grows turbid. The same is true here. One small seizure of wealth, one power that oversteps, one currency that is eroded, and the effect spreads everywhere. Civilization is therefore not a destination but a state that must be guarded every single day. It survives only through the continuous wakefulness of its people. We cannot merely celebrate its achievements, we must understand the thin foundation that supports them: voluntary cooperation, trust, self-restraint. Without these, what we call civilization may prove only a short dream before darkness returns. Part 12, The 6 Great Lessons. As I close this journey, I realize that economics, which seems to be merely calculations about goods, capital, and money, is actually a far larger story, the story of human character. Here are the 6 lessons that matter most. First, everything begins with individual action. There is no abstract market outside the countless small decisions made every day: buy or not buy, keep or spend, save or consume. We easily get lost in grand concepts, nation, economy, system, and forget that all of them are nothing but the sum of those single acts. It is in these tiny choices that economic history is written. Second, value is subjective. A diamond has no objective worth, it is valuable only because someone desires it. Water may be priceless in the desert yet worthless beside a river. This truth, though obvious, shatters many illusions: that happiness can be measured by indices, that life can be priced by common standards. No. Value is perception, mobile, changing with circumstance and time. Understanding this teaches humility: what I scorn may save another's life. Third, time is the true currency. Every economic decision is ultimately a decision about time: live for today or invest in tomorrow. Our time preference shapes both personal fate and the destiny of societies. If we live only for the moment, we remain trapped in consumption and anxiety. If we dare to postpone, save, and invest, we break the loop and step onto an upward path. Civilization, at its core, is the collective ability to extend vision beyond a single lifetime. Fourth, capital, technology, and energy are not random gifts. They are the direct fruit of patience and creativity. A hunter's trap, a steam engine, a line of code, all prove that humans can turn time into tools, and that energy is the soil and lifeblood without which every technology remains mere paper ideas. Fifth, money and markets are spontaneous orders. Money was not invented by any ruler, it emerged from the natural selection of countless exchanges. Markets are not machines designed from above but living orders born from individual actions. Once we grasp this, we stop fantasizing that a few buttons at the center of power can control everything. We learn to respect prices, interest rates, profits and losses, the fragile but far more accurate signals than any central plan. And finally, the greatest lesson: civilization is fragile. All the progress we call advancement exists only as long as violence is kept in check. When violence returns as the rule, everything dissolves, property becomes meaningless, saving becomes foolish, money turns to paper, and markets become battlefields. Civilization does not perish from scarcity of resources but because humans forget discipline, forget to restrain short-term desires, forget that the future must be protected as carefully as the present. Closing. These lessons are not meant to be read and shelved. They place us before uncomfortable questions. How are you spending your time, consuming it all in the present or saving some for a more meaningful tomorrow? Do you see the money in your hand as a ticket for instant pleasure or as a seed that can grow if tended? Do you truly believe in voluntary exchange, or deep down do you still think violence is faster? And most important, are you willing to maintain your own discipline even when the whole society around you is letting go? I cannot answer for you. Each person must walk through these questions alone. But I know one thing: if enough individuals have the courage to restrain immediate desires, to respect property, to trust voluntary exchange, then we are each contributing to the preservation of the most precious thing of all, not wealth, not technology, but civilization itself. Thank you for listening.